Welcome aboard the Story Arc. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're setting sail into part 2 of our special series, The Story Arc Presents American Demigods. This series is a collaborative adventure with students from Brigham Young University, where we're exploring the mythic figures who populate the American imagination. Those folk heroes and tall tale characters who straddle the line between human and divine, ordinary and extraordinary, in ways that feel uniquely American. These are the characters who don't just live in stories, they shape them. They are the ones who swing hammers, plant orchards, lasso tornadoes, and leap across rivers. They embody the spirit of the frontier, the pulse of invention, and the poetry of persistence. And whether they're born from fact, fiction, or something in between, they continue to echo through our cultural memory like thunder on the plains. Today's episode, here's Johnny. Yes, that's a reference people still catch. Thank you, The Shining, and thank you, Johnny Carson. It's a phrase that's become part of the pop culture ether, much like the legends we're exploring. Today, we're talking about two iconic Johns, Johnny Appleseed and John Henry. One sowed seeds across the American heartland, the other drove steel into the bones of a mountain. Both left behind legacies that continue to grow, resonate, and inspire. Let's begin with Johnny Appleseed. He's one of the rare demigod figures in American folklore, whose roots trace back to a real historical person. John Chapman, born in 1774 in Massachusetts. Chapman was a frontiersman, missionary, and horticulturist who became known for his tireless efforts to cultivate apple orchards across the expanding American frontier. He wasn't just scattering seeds, he was establishing nurseries, promoting sustainable agriculture, and encouraging settlers to plant with vision and care. But the legend of Johnny Appleseed quickly grew beyond the man. Over time, Chapman was transformed into a barefoot wanderer with a tin pot on his head, a gentle soul who communed with animals and spread kindness as freely as he scattered seeds. He became a symbol of simplicity, generosity, and harmony with nature, a kind of American saint whose mythic image often eclipses the historical record. What makes Johnny Appleseed so compelling as a demigod figure is this blend of fact and fable. He's not just a character in a story, he's a story in himself. His legend invites us to imagine a world where planting an apple tree is an act of hope, where walking barefoot is a sign of humility, and where living lightly on the land is a form of quiet heroism. In many ways, Johnny Appleseed represents a pastoral counter-narrative to the industrial age. While others were building railroads and forging steel, he was nurturing orchards and tending to the earth. His myth reminds us that heroism doesn't always roar. It can also bloom quietly in the soil beneath our feet. As one person recalls about the legend,
I think the thing that stands out the most was how he was always described as this kind of wild, free spirit. He was a man on a mission, you know. He didn't care much for the stuff like owning land or having a lot of money. He just wandered around planting apple trees everywhere. He said he wore a pot on his head, too. The real story, though, was about his apples. He planted apple orchards all across the Oregon Trail to near Washington. He didn't charge people for the trees or anything. He just gave them away. I always heard he did it because he wanted people to have food and to be able to grow their own. Some people say he could talk to animals, or that the trees he planted grew faster than normal. I don't know how much of that's true, but definitely the kind of thing people love to exaggerate about a guy like Johnny. Henry Howe visited all the counties in Ohio in the early 19th century and collected several stories from the 1830s, when Johnny Appleseed was still alive. One cool autumnal night, while laying by his campfire in the woods, he observed that the mosquitoes flew in the blaze and were burned. Johnny, who wore on his head a tin utensil, which answered both as a cap and as a mush pot, filled it with water and quenched the fire, afterwards remarked, "God forbid that I should build a fire for my comfort. That should be the means of destroying any of his creatures." Another time, he allegedly made a campfire in a snowstorm at the end of a hollow log, in which he intended to pass the night, but he found it occupied by a bear and cubs, so he removed his fire to the other end and slept on the snow in the open air, rather than disturb the bear. In 1880, abolitionist author Lydia Maria Child mythologized Appleseed in a poem. In cities, some said the old man was crazy, while others said he was only lazy, but he took no notice of jibes and jeers. He knew that he was working for future years. If they inquire whence came such trees, where not a bough once swayed in the breeze, The answer still comes as they travel on. These trees were planted by Appleseed John.
The romanticized version of Johnny Appleseed paints him as a kind of American nature mystic, a barefoot wanderer, half saint and half sprite, moving through the wilderness with a tin pot on his head and a heart full of generosity. In this idealized telling, Johnny isn't just planting trees, he's communing with the land. He's one with the animals, the rivers, the wind. He's a gentle soul who refuses to harm even the smallest creature. One popular anecdote claims that Johnny once extinguished his campfire because he noticed mosquitoes were drawn to the flame and feared he might be killing them. Another story tells of him arriving at a hollow log, intending to sleep inside, only to find a mother bear and her cub already nestled in there. Rather than disturb them, he gave up the shelter and slept out in the snow. Now, whether that's an act of saintly charity or just good survival instincts, because, let's be honest, who's waking up a bear? The story still reinforces the image of Johnny as a man who deferred to nature, who saw himself not as its master, but as its guest. Folklore also tells us that Johnny spoke to animals, and even to his apple trees, treating them as companions rather than commodities. He's often imagined walking across the American frontier, scattering apple seeds with abandon, letting them take root wherever they fell. It's a beautiful image, chaotic, organic, almost Edenic. But it's also a far cry from the reality of John Chapman. The historical Chapman was no whimsical seed scatterer. He was a savvy horticulturalist and businessman. His goal wasn't to randomly populate the wilderness with apple trees. It was to establish nurseries and teach settlers to cultivate orchards. He understood the land, studied its conditions, and planted trees that could survive harsh winters and poor soil. These weren't sweet-eating apples either. They were mostly for cider, which was safer to drink than water and could be sold or traded. Chapman's work was practical, strategic, and deeply rooted in the economic needs of frontier communities. So, when we compare the mythic Johnny Appleseed to the real John Chapman, the contrast is striking. One is a barefoot prophet of nature, scattering seeds like blessings. The other is a horticulturist scientist, planting in neat rows and teaching others how to tame the land. The only real overlap? A kind heart and a desire to help people. But the myth has eclipsed the man, transforming him into something more symbolic. An American demigod of peace, simplicity, and ecological reverence.
Author Michael Pollan believes that since Chapman was against grafting and thus virtually all of his apples were not edible, could be used only for cider. Really what Johnny Appleseed was doing, and the reason he was welcome in every cabin in Ohio and Indiana, was he was bringing the gift of alcohol to the frontier. He was our American Dionysus. The Fort Wayne Centennial printed his obituary on March 22, 1845, saying that he died on March 18th. On the same day in his neighborhood, at an advanced age, Mr. John Chapman, better known as Johnny Appleseed. The deceased was well known through this region by his eccentricity and the strange garb he usually wore. He followed the occupation of a nurseryman and has been a regular visitor here upwards of 10 years. He was a native of Pennsylvania, we understand, but his home, if home he had, for some years past, was in the neighborhood of Cleveland, where he has relatives living. He is supposed to have considerable poverty, yet denied himself almost the common necessities of life, not so much, perhaps, for avarice as from his particular notions on religious subjects. He was a follower of Swedenborg and devoutly believed that the more he endured in this world, the less he would have to suffer and the greater would be his happiness hereafter. He submitted to every privation with cheerfulness and content, believing that in so doing he was securing snug quarters hereafter. In the most inclement weather, he might have been seen barefooted and almost naked, except when he had chance to pick up articles of old clothing. Notwithstanding the privations and exposure he endured, he lived to an extreme old age, not less than 80 years at the time of his death, though no person would have judged from his appearance that he was 60. He always carried with him some work of the doctrines of Swedenborg, with which he was particularly familiar, and would readily converse and argue on his tenets, using much shrewdness and penetration. His death was quite sudden. He was seen on our streets a day or two previous.
Now let's turn to another demigod whose story begins in history but explodes into myth. John Henry. Like Johnny Appleseed, John Henry is said to be based on a real man. possibly an escaped slave turned railroad laborer. But the legend has grown so large that the historical figure is almost unrecognizable beneath the layers of song and story. John Henry is remembered as a man of superhuman strength, a steel-driving titan who could hammer faster and harder than any machine. He worked on the railroads during the post-Civil War era, a time when industrialization was rapidly reshaping the American landscape. His most famous feat? A race against a steam-powered drill to see who could tunnel through a mountain faster. He won, but the effort cost him his life. In that moment, John Henry became a symbol of human dignity, labor, and resistance against mechanization. What makes John Henry especially powerful is his identity as an African-American folk hero. Though the popular ballad doesn't explicitly mention his race, the historical context and oral traditions suggest that he was a black man, possibly a former slave, whose story resonated deeply with African-American communities. His legend was preserved not through written records, but through song and poetry, passed down across generations. Each retelling becomes a kind of invocation, a rhythmic tribute to strength, sacrifice, and the soul of the working man.
When John Henry was a little tiny baby, sitting on his mama's knee, he picked up a hammer and a little piece of steel, saying, "Hammer's gonna be the death of me, Lord, Lord. Hammers are gonna be the death of me." John Henry was a man just 6 feet high, nearly 2.5 feet across his breast. He'd hammer with a 9-pound hammer all day, and never get tired and want to rest, Lord, Lord, and never get tired and want to rest. John Henry went up on the mountain, and he looked one eye straight up its side. The mountain was so tall and John Henry so small. He laid down his hammer and he cried, "Lord, Lord." He laid down his hammer and cried. John Henry said to his captain, "Captain, you go to town. Bring me back a 12-pound hammer, please, and I'll beat that steam drill down. Lord, Lord, I'll beat that steam drill down." The captain said to John Henry, "I believe this mountain's sinking in." But John Henry said, "Captain, just you stand aside. It's nothing but my hammer catching wind. Lord, Lord, there's nothing but my hammer catching wind." John Henry said to his shaker, "Shaker, boy, you better start to pray, because if my 12-pound hammer missed that little piece of steel, tomorrow will be your burying day. Lord, Lord, tomorrow will be your burying day." John Henry said to his captain, "A man is nothing but a man, but before I let your steam drill beat me down, I'll die with a hammer in my hand. Lord, Lord, I'll die with a hammer in my hand." The man that invented the steam drill, he figured he was mighty high and fine. John Henry sunk the steel down 14 feet, while the steam drill only made 9. Lord, Lord, the steam drill only made 9. John Henry hammered on the right-hand side. Steam drill kept driving on the left. John Henry beat the steam drill down, but he hammered his poor heart to death. Lord, Lord, he hammered his poor heart to death. Well, that carried John Henry down the tunnel, and they laid his body in the sand. Now every woman riding on a C&O train says, "There lies my steel-driving man. Lord, Lord, there lies my steel-driving man."
Unlike other folk heroes who embody whimsy or eccentricity, John Henry's myth is grounded in struggle. He's not a trickster or a wanderer, he's a fighter. His story asks, what does it mean to be human in the face of machines? What does it mean to die for your work, your pride, your people? In the end, Henry is able to beat the steam drill in the race, proving that man is better than machine. But it costs him his life. One of the most significant parts of the poem to me is the line, "The mountain was so tall, and John Henry was so small." Initially, Henry is too overcome by the size of the task before him to even start, until he gains motivation from the competition of the steam drill. John Henry's martyrdom is a manifestation of the fears of the laborers about industrialization and mechanization. Not only that it was coming for their jobs, but that the things they create, like the tunnel, wouldn't be as safe as if they were man-made. I'm sure many listeners can relate to such fears with the addition of AI to our modern workspaces. What do you think a John Henry story would look like today? Would the man still win against the machine? Would the people still remember him as a hero? Of course, we all know that train tunnels are now built with giant machines and that the manpower of John Henry's day didn't hold out for long. But if his story is so irrelevant, why do we still tell it? Both John Henry and Johnny Appleseed are popular stories taught in classrooms around the United States. They're made into picture books and even celebrated with festivals in some parts of Appalachia. Maybe it's just because they're fun stories, or because it's tradition. But there is also some didactic value to these tall tales. Johnny Appleseed is a great reminder to be kind and respectful to nature, that civilization can live in harmony with our environment. I don't think John Henry's story is still told to teach children to be scared of new technology, but it does hold a valuable lesson in the value of good, hard, honest work. The Story Arc is a production of Food for Thought Audio. The Story Arc is hosted by Kenny Mears. This episode was produced in association with students from Brigham Young University. A huge thanks to everyone who contributes to this episode. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts for more content. And as always, thanks for your comments. We read them all, and thanks for listening.